That day there were a lot of memories. Memories of seeing the first plane aim and crash into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, the sound of the buildings collapsing. But my strongest memories are that of the firefighters. The firefighters, as they came in, they knew they were going to the most dangerous fire of their lives. And so did our medical folks, our paramedics, and our law enforcement, our police officers. They came in, and usually responders aren't quiet. But that morning, they came in quietly. And I could remember one lieutenant coming up to me, not saying a word. And we looked at each other, wondering if we're both going to be okay. And then I told that lieutenant, as I told many other fire officers, I said, go up, evacuate the building, and then regroup on the upper floors to rescue those that couldn't get out. And each of those fire officers took their company, their firefighters, and started to climb the narrow stairs of the World Trade Center because the elevators weren't working. And as they were climbing, people were coming down. And they told people, don't stop. Keep going. You can make it out of here. And we know those simple words made a difference for those that survived that day. Over the years, when I would speak to different people, they would immediately say, I know where I was that day. Mm-hmm. And I could tell you what it felt like and who I was with. But this new generation, and I just spoke to a bunch of high school students just a little while ago who weren't even born on 9/11. And they're looking at it from a different perspective. It's not just history of something that took in the past. What I told them is, how does that moment in time translate into your generation? What we saw at the World Trade Center, what I call ordinary heroes that go up to rescue people. And the reason why I tell that to students, the young people, because they think of 9/11 as the responders, the firefighters, as superheroes. And what I told them in the title of my book, Ordinary Heroes, is by doing ordinary things, telling people to evacuate the building, helping people that couldn't walk any longer. Ordinary things, but at an extraordinary time. And what I want this new generation to see is that they too can be an ordinary hero, to make a difference in people's lives. You don't have to be this superhero, but just by ordinary acts of kindness, we can change the world. Storytelling is extremely powerful. We have a lot of ideas, a lot of things we've learned from 9/11. But by telling stories, we invite people into that world a quarter of a century ago. And I've met with people, victims of terrorism throughout the world, but also at the United Nations. And what I told them at a Congress of Victims of Terrorism a couple of years ago, speaking to well over 100 nations and victims, I told them, I used words because I too am a victim. and a survivor, I used words that were in all our hearts. I said that we do not ignore the pain of being victims of terrorism. Instead, we give it purpose to bring about change. Because without purpose, there is no hope. And without hope, there's no call to global action. And that purpose is told through stories. Stories of that day, wherever it was in the world. And the purpose to make a difference. I have a very special relationship with France. One was having a French filmmaker follow me during 9/11, Jules Naudet and Gideon Naudet. So it goes back to 9/11. But after that event, we've also met with the Paris Fire Brigade. And there was a very special relationship between the fire brigade and the FDNY. We shared stories. And when the 13th of November of 2015, the attacks on Paris, I went over to Paris and we met with people from the fire brigade, from the BRI, the SWAT team that went in, the Minister of the Interior, who became Prime Minister, Chesnu. And usually at these meetings is usually a 30-minute meeting, and they put up a nice PowerPoint and everybody leaves. But once they realized myself and Jules was there, that the people from 9/11 was in the room, that 30-minute meeting, and I'm not exaggerating, went to 3 hours. And they told their stories of what it was like rescuing people. And then the BRI going in to rescue the hostages that were on the second floor and lined a narrow hallway. And one of the SWAT team members said, as he pushed in a shield that took something like 27 rounds from a long weapon, he said it hit a couple steps and then fell flat. And now that officer was face to face with a terrorist. And he was able to take out his sidearm and neutralize him. But it was talking to the hostages along that narrow hallway and their survival. And there's nothing better, and I'm sure you agree, there's nothing better than having lunch in Paris. And Jules and myself and 6 hostages had lunch in Paris. And we didn't have to tell our stories because we knew them from Jules's film, 9/11, and then the 13th November, the attacks in Paris. And we sat in the restaurant together with a sense of hope for the future. And I think going back 10 years and sitting with the hostages, my friends, the Paris Fire Brigade, and the BRI, also my friends, that we will reflect on the past and envision the future with a hope. And I'm sure that day will be very special, and I'll be there with the mayor and the president. But there's a special moment Mayor Hidalgo and I had Um, and it was just a few months ago, her coming to New York City. And I took her to the firehouse where I was the chief, and then to the 9/11 Memorial Museum. And we walked the halls, and Jules and her staff was with us. And we walked the museum. And what we noticed was there was quiet. There wasn't a lot of talking, and that happens every day, even though that's the most visited museum in New York City. And in the quiet, and seeing the tapes of 9/11 in the background, what we did was simply give each other a hug. And as we looked around the room, we noticed that people were doing the same thing. So in this moment of reflecting on the past, whether it's 9/11 or it's the attacks on Paris, sometimes we just need to be with people and without words, expressing what's in our hearts, that we're in this together. We think about the attacks as attacks against humanity. And the question is, how do we come together to turn traumatic memories into hope? And I think what we see, the relationship between the U.S. and France, or particularly between New York and Paris, we see the sharing of stories, responsibilities, and ideas. And certainly the ideas that we exchanged over the years was important for both countries. And that's something for all of us to remember. Over the years, I reflected a lot on what we learned from that event. And I think there's three principles of crisis leadership that I take away of really the lessons learned. The first is to connect to voice, video, and data, to have situational awareness of what's taking place in every moment of the tragic event. And the second is to collaborate. I just don't want firefighters in front of me. I want to be with my firefighters, my paramedics and EMTs, medical folks, law enforcement, deputy mayors, and other political leaders. And what we do is share ideas. And then leadership is really about what I refer to as crisis empathy. So for my counterparts, to listen to their concerns and then articulate in words what they're worried about. And by doing that, there's a recognition that I understand their difficulty and sharing ideas on how to deal with a difficult situation. And then the third element is to coordinate, to come together and with our different core competencies, be able to respond to a difficult and challenging event. So the three principles are to connect, collaborate, and coordinate. I absolutely have hope for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our better world, and we have many challenges, not only terrorism, we also have climate. We see climate disasters throughout the world, and we need to deal with that, where an extreme weather event displaces thousands of people without food, water, or shelter. And we need to come together for that. But I think what we see is and we felt it on 9/11, and we felt it in Paris, and we see people coming together. And by reflecting on the past and envisioning the future, so we can enhance the present. And we not only see that, but we feel this sense of hope. And I believe, as I wrote in my book, that an ordinary hero is in each one of us, that we together can make a difference.